Behold, Malcolm X flakes. They're nutritious, delicious, and perfectly crunchy. Comparatively, according to Teyanna'sMadeUpFacts.com, the cereal sells 8 times more boxes than any other competitor. However, while other cereals are nutritious and delicious too, the real reason for the brand's dominance is the name and face that come with it. To understand this, we need to understand Malcolm X and why he's so influential. Today we'll be talking about the early history of the brand, the nutritional facts, and its discontinuation. Malcolm X was born May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. His mom was a caretaker of the home, and his dad was a black minister and a supporter of black nationalism. He also had 7 siblings. Because of his father's support in black nationalism, the family often faced threats by white supremacists, mainly the group called Black Legion. To escape racial oppression, Malcolm X and his family moved frequently. Eventually, however, despite many times of moving, the family was caught up to by the Black Legion. And just a week after their home was burned to the ground, their father was killed. This caused the family to be in ruin. His mother was sent to an insane asylum because she couldn't handle what had happened to his father. And the 7 siblings and he were split up into foster homes and orphanages. After Malcolm X reached an age where he was free of the system, he moved to Boston with a friend. Here he got into crime and was sentenced to 10 years for burglary. While jail kind of enclosures most people and breaks them off and breaks them down, jail was a time when Malcolm X liberated himself and fed his mind. Thus, the reason why the cereal is whole grain. Along with educating himself, his siblings also visited him and introduced him to the Nation of Islam, a black nationalist group that was slowly but steadily gaining attention. He abandoned the name of Little, which was his last name legally, and changed it with X to symbolize the lost name of his ancestors that were taken when the slaves arrived from Africa. In 1952, he went to work with the leader Elijah Muhammad, who served as a messenger of the group. According to biography.com, in just the 8 years that Malcolm X was involved with the group, its membership grew from 400 to 40,000. He was a minister of 2 temples and also founded 2 temples of his own. He preached a revolution of violence toward the goal of a separate nation. When I say he preached violence, he didn't mean go out and burn the city to the ground. What Malcolm X was trying to say is go out and be peaceful and try to get it what you want in your human rights. But when someone puts their hands on you or tries to hurt you, you have the right to self-defend. And this is a common misconception about the beliefs of Malcolm X. Sometime during the last few years of Malcolm's association with the Nation of Islam, he found out that Muhammad Elijah had not been completely 100% committed to the faith. And this caused some controversy between him and Muhammad, as well as Malcolm's insensitivity towards John F. Kennedy's death. Because of these differences, Malcolm X broke away from the group. During this time, he wanted to find solutions on how to end racism for African Americans in America. And to do this, he journeyed to Africa and also went on the customary religious trip to Mecca. Here, this changed his whole belief on racism. Before, he had believed that whites were devils based purely on their skin. But going to Mecca made him realize that it's not about race, it's about your intentions, because he saw how white, Asian, and Black people and Middle Eastern people were all coming in the name of Allah, and it truly amazed him. He says, all colors bowing in unison, and he was not conscious of color for the first time in his life. It also records that out of the sudden darkness comes sudden light. My, how fortune can change. This brings us to the discontinuation. His realization of this new fact of how everything he knew about racism had changed was short-lived, because soon after his trip from Mecca, he was shot and killed in February 25th, 1965 at Audubon Ballroom, just a week after his house was firebombed, similar to the death of his own father. According to CNN, there are two theories of how Malcolm X's death came about. One is the most commonly accepted version, that the Nation of Islam came to do his assassination because he had gained so much power from being such an influential speaker. He was the second most sought after speaker in the 1960s. And they feared that his new realization would steal power away from their movement. And they were also angry at his departure. And for his death, three members of the Nation of Islam were arrested and convicted of his crime. The second theory is the government theory. This is supported because while three of the people were convicted, two of them remained their claim of innocence. Also, when Malcolm was to give his speech at the ballroom, there were usually 24 officers, but only 2 officers were there, but they were in a small separate room. They also had given up gun checks or pat-downs that were customary, and some people were saying how Malcolm requested that himself, but there's no real proof that Malcolm ever said that, and it seems illogical that he would say that there should be no checkings at the door. At least one Bureau of Special Services agent who had infiltrated his organization was found, and after his death, there was no forensic analysis like there would have been at any other crime scene, which leads us to believe why wouldn't they have done that. So to recap, we looked at the history of the brand, the nutritional facts, and its discontinuation. However, while Malcolm X is gone, his legacy lives on. His beliefs of violence also helped further Dr. King's support from fearful whites, because the two were at odds with each other and kind of hated each other until Malcolm's realization of that it's not completely about race, and once or twice they worked together. But it also helped his fear that he put into American whites helped move Dr. King's movement, which leads us to today's integrated society. He also helped Black people find their strength and their voice and taught them that you have a right to fight for who you are and your human rights. His ideas also laid the foundation for the Black Power movements in the 1970s and also influenced the Black Panther movement, which was a huge movement in the 1980s meant to protect Black neighborhoods. So whether or not you agreed with what he had to say, you can see how his history has led him to believe in what he has believed, and how what an amazing character he had to acknowledge his wrong, and for the 8 years that he worked about preaching how whites were evil, and how he was able to acknowledge that he was wrong, and that it's about intentions and not just strictly about race. So I'd like to thank Malcolm X for everything that he has done for the Black community, and thank him by eating his cereal every day. Thank you.